Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the second shelf. Wobbling the camera. Welcome back to the second shelf and to another TBR video. As you know, if you're following me and if you're new, just very briefly, TBR for the purpose of this video that I make every month means to be released. So at the end of each month or the beginning of a new month, I look at the forthcoming new releases and I pick a couple, 4, 5, 6 that I find interesting and I share them with you. And as always, we start off with literary fiction, and for this category, I picked a July release, Kalisha Buchanan's new book, Speaking of Summer, which will be released on the 30th of July. Kalisha Buchanan is an American, a Black American author born in 1977. She has published multiple novels before, and I've never read her, and I need to remedy that. So, Speaking of Summer made the TBR. The book is set in the present day, and we follow a young woman, Autumn, whose twin sister, Summer, hence Speaking of Summer, disappeared. Autumn then tries to find out what happened to her, gets involved in the investigation, but also gets from what I understand from the blurb, obsessed with missing women and violence against women, men who kill the women who went missing. So it's addressing a broader theme within a family setting, within a twin sister missing. As I said, I've never read Kalisha Buchanan, and I think that's a miss, so I wanted to remedy that. But also, the theme of the book really interested me because, as you know, if you're following me, I always like it if the story, if it's set in the present day, can be read in a broader context. So, Speaking of Summer is my pick for new literary fiction in July. Next, we move on to historical fiction, and for this one, I picked Naomi Wood's new book, The Hiding Game, which will come out at the beginning of July. You might know Naomi Wood. She was born in 1983 in York, and she lives in London, and she publishes historical fiction, and her last book, called Mrs. Hemingway, was about the women in Hemingway's life. So you might have heard about that. Her new one, The Hiding Game, is also historical fiction set in Germany in the 1920s, the beginning of the 1920s. We follow an art student who enrolls in the famous Bauhaus art school. Now, Bauhaus, if you're not familiar, is an art movement in Germany between the beginning of the 1920s, for 20 years, founded by Walter Gropius, and it tries to, or it tried to combine art and crafts, and had a certain very, linear outlook on architecture and design. I will leave a link to the Wikipedia page on Bauhaus down below if you want to just, learn a little more. So anyway, our main character enrolls in this art school, and then the book moves around art, but also, as far as I understood, the protagonist will look back years later on some secrets that he discovered while being enrolled in the Bauhaus school. Now, if you watched my video on the bookish buzzwords tag, you know that one of the things that I mentioned there and talked about is how much I love books about art. So whenever I find a book that deals either with an artist or with an art movement or with a piece of art, I'm immediately intrigued. And that was the main reason that I picked Naomi Wood's new book for the July TBR. Also because I love her as a writer, as I already mentioned, Mrs. Hemingway. Oh, and I will read this book as a buddy read not in July, but in September with Brian from Bookish. I'll leave a link to his channel down below. If you're not subscribed, please go check him out and subscribe. And Brian doesn't read that many new releases, and I felt obligated to have him read at least one new release this year, so we will read this book in September. The third book I want to talk to you about is Nonfiction, and for this one I picked Lisa Taddeo's new book, Three Women, which will be published on the 9th of July, and if I understood it correctly, it will come out in Canada, the US, the UK, but also in the Dutch and German translation at the same time, all in July. Lisa Taddeo is an American journalist and author. She published short fiction, but also non-fiction pieces in magazines. And Three Women is about three women, Lena, Maggie, and Sloane, whom Lisa Taddeo followed over more than a decade. And the focus of the book is sex life, desire, the erotics of these three women and the struggles they have with their husbands or relationships. So it's obviously journalism reporting about the sex life of three particular women, but from what I understood, it's of course trying to draw a bigger picture about the topic of sex and women. This book received quite some buzz already for the summer, and I'm just going with that flow. But I mean, I thought the topic sounded fascinating. I don't think there are many, at least recently. I mean, you had many books about women and sex, in the 70s and 80s during the feminist wave back then. But I didn't come across many new releases about this topic. And I thought this is interesting. It's something that about current affairs of women. But I was also drawn to it because it's the reporting took place over a longer period of time, almost a decade. So it's not a snapshot of women's sex lives or women's desires or these three women's desires, but it's really a reporting over a longer period, and that interested me. So Lisa Taddeo, The Three Women, made the TBR list for nonfiction. Next, of course, we move on to crime. You know how much I love crime. And my July pick is Cass Freer's new book, Stone Cold Heart, the second book in the Kat Kinsella series. I read the first one, Sweet Little Lies, last year or the year before. It came out in 2017, and I really liked it. The main detective, Kat Kinsella, is feisty, intelligent, down to earth, but also complicated. And I really love the way that Cass Freer does plotting, with just enough clues so that you feel stupid at the end that you didn't get it, but not heavy-handed. So I'm really excited about the second one in the series. I don't know whether, from what I understood, I don't think you need to read the first one in order to read the second one. So you might just want to try out this one. It's a murder investigation, and our detective is back at the Metropolitan Police in London. Cass Freer is a UK writer, I should have said that. So the detective, Kat Kinsella, is working for the London Metropolitan Police, and together with her partner Luigi, they are tasked to solve the murder of a young Australian woman, Naomi. She just started a new job and ended up dead after a party, and there is immediately a suspect, a man called Joseph, who claims that he is innocent, that he was home with his wife, but his wife contradicts his alibi. And then, that's all I know, and that's all I need to know, because like I said, Kat Kinsella and Cass Freer. Cass Freer is really good in plotting, I think. So I'm looking forward to another adventure featuring Kinsella as the detective. And as always in my TBR videos, we end with sci-fi. And for July, I picked an author that is unfamiliar to me, so new to me author, although it's not a debut novel, and that is Carly Wallace, Salvation Day. Carly Wallace is an American author, Californian author, and she wrote a middle grade and YA horror sci-fi novels that I hadn't read, but this one, Salvation Day, is her first sci-fi horror for adults. Now, if you know me, if you follow me for any length of time, you know that I'm not that much into horror. I hardly ever read horror fiction, but this one, because the sci-fi element seems to be prominent, I thought I might want to give it a try. And also, can never hurt you sort of expanding your horizons. Anyway, Salvation Day will come out on the 9th of July, and it follows a main character, Sarah. And you have an abandoned spaceship, abandoned long ago by the Earth because there was a deadly virus on the ship. But there is one survivor, and Sarah and her crew, I understood that they're sort of, spaceship pirates. They want to get hold of this vessel because it might be worth something. And they kidnap this sole survivor in order to gain entry into the spaceship. And then, of course, all hell breaks loose because the virus is then released and, plot ensues, I hope. The book is marketed as a fast-paced, claustrophobic thriller with a sci-fi element. And I thought, well, maybe the horror might not be something that I'm drawn to originally, but the sci-fi element and certainly a fast-paced thriller in a sci-fi setting, that's my jam. So I'm really looking forward to trying out Carly Wallace's new book, Salvation Day. If you read Carly Wallace's other works or her YA and middle grade, let me know what you thought of her, because I'm really interested in this new author. So these were my picks for the July TBR. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. Let me know down in the comments whether any of the books might interest you, or whether you have any new releases in July that you are looking forward to. And I'll see you all soon in the next one. Bye-bye.